The alien vessel hung in Earth's orbit, a breathtaking spectacle that captivated the entire planet. Its crystalline structure shimmered with an ethereal glow, casting prismatic patterns across the sky. Humanity watched in awe as this monumental presence defied all known laws of physics, maintaining its position with effortless grace. The world held its breath, unsure whether this was the beginning of salvation or destruction. Amidst the global tension, Captain Elias Grant found himself at the center of humanity's response. A decorated officer with 15 years of service, his weathered face bore the marks of countless missions and sleepless nights. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the moment he stood before the assembled United Nations Security Council, tasked with leading Earth's first direct contact team. His heart pounded not just from the weight of responsibility, but from a deeper, more personal turmoil. The memory of his wife's tragic loss during a previous space mission still haunted him. As the designated envoy, Elias carried more than just diplomatic credentials. His extensive experience with alien artifacts and his unparalleled ability to remain calm under pressure made him uniquely qualified for this unprecedented mission. But it was his unwavering belief in peaceful resolution, forged through years of conflict and loss, that truly set him apart. Standing in the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the alien ship pulse with an inner light, Elias felt the weight of billions of lives resting on his shoulders. The preparation process was unlike anything humanity had ever undertaken. Scientists, linguists, and cultural experts worked around the clock, analyzing every minute detail of the alien vessel's movements and emissions. Strange symbols began appearing on the ship's surface, shifting and rearranging in complex patterns that seemed to defy conventional language structures. Each new development brought both hope and anxiety, as humanity struggled to interpret the intentions behind these cosmic visitors. Elias spent hours studying the transmission logs, searching for any pattern or meaning in the alien communications. His quarters became a sanctuary of research materials, filled with holographic projections of the symbols and audio recordings of the strange, melodic sounds emanating from the ship. Despite the technological marvels surrounding him, it was the human element that consumed his thoughts. How would he represent his species when their very survival might depend on his actions? The night before the scheduled contact, Elias found himself staring out at the alien vessel, its light reflecting in his eyes. Memories of his wife's final message played in his mind, her voice urging him to continue seeking understanding beyond Earth's boundaries. This mission wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about honoring the dreams they had shared, the belief that humanity could rise above its limitations and connect with the universe at large. As he prepared to meet beings whose existence challenged everything humanity thought it knew, Elias understood that this moment would define not just his legacy, but the future of his entire species. The first encounter occurred in a specially constructed chamber aboard the orbital station, where human technology met alien architecture in a fusion of design philosophies. The air crackled with anticipation as the delegation waited, their collective breath held in suspended animation. When the portal opened, it wasn't with a mechanical hiss or a rush of atmosphere, but rather a gentle unfolding of space itself, like petals blooming in reverse. She emerged not walking, but gliding, her form radiating an otherworldly grace that defied conventional movement. Her presence commanded immediate reverence. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, her body seemed composed of living crystal, each facet catching and refracting light into cascading rainbows. Her skin, if it could be called that, shifted through iridescent hues, responding to her emotions in ways that transcended human expression. Most striking were her eyes, vast pools of liquid starlight that seemed to contain entire galaxies within their depths. The delegation, prepared for months through simulations and briefings, found themselves utterly unprepared for the reality of her majesty. Communication proved both fascinating and frustrating. Her voice resonated not just through the air, but directly within the minds of those present, carrying multiple layers of meaning in a single syllable. Human translators worked feverishly to decode the complex patterns of sound and thought, while she demonstrated remarkable patience, repeating phrases and adjusting her approach until basic understanding began to emerge. Through this painstaking process, they learned her title, Sovereign Lumina, though the translation felt inadequate, like trying to capture sunlight in a jar. The negotiations unfolded with excruciating slowness, each side struggling to bridge the chasm between their vastly different perspectives. Sovereign Lumina's gestures carried significance far beyond human body language, with each movement conveying volumes of information. Her attendants, similarly crystalline beings of various shapes and sizes, moved in precise formations that appeared to be an intricate dance of communication. The humans quickly realized they weren't just negotiating with a single entity, but with an entire Gestalt consciousness, where individual and collective thoughts intertwined seamlessly. Tensions mounted as fundamental misunderstandings threatened to derail the proceedings. Concepts of territory, ownership, and individual rights proved particularly challenging, as these notions seemed almost alien to sovereign Lumina society. Time itself flowed differently for her people, measured not in linear progression but in cycles of energy and consciousness. Every breakthrough in understanding revealed new layers of complexity, forcing the human delegation to constantly adapt their approach. Throughout these exchanges, Sovereign Lumina maintained an aura of regal detachment, yet there were moments when her crystalline features softened, suggesting a depth of emotion that transcended visible expression. These rare glimpses of vulnerability hinted at a being who carried the weight of countless worlds on her shoulders, much like Elias did for humanity. The connection between them grew stronger with each session, though neither fully understood why this particular human-alien pairing seemed to resonate so profoundly. The chamber itself became a living testament to their attempts at mutual understanding. Human technology adapted to accommodate alien needs, while crystalline structures grew organically from the walls, creating a hybrid environment that symbolized their evolving relationship. Yet beneath this apparent progress lay currents of uncertainty and hidden agendas, as both sides carefully guarded their true intentions while striving for genuine connection. During one particularly tense negotiation session, the crystalline walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with suppressed energy, mirroring the rising tension between the human delegation and Sovereign Lumina's court. The discussion had turned to Earth's resource consumption and environmental impact, a topic that had quickly escalated into accusations of planetary negligence. As Elias attempted to explain humanity's efforts toward sustainability, his frustration mounted against the seemingly impossible standards set by the alien queen. "Your species consumes without replenishing," Sovereign Lumina's voice resonated through the chamber, each word carrying multiple layers of meaning that reverberated in the minds of all present. "You treat your home as if it were infinite, while knowing it is finite." Her crystalline form shimmered with increasing intensity, casting prismatic shadows across the room. Captain Grant stepped forward, his military bearing masking the turmoil within. "Your Majesty, we've made significant progress in recent decades. The Paris Accords, the Mars terraforming project. The damage already done cannot be undone with treaties and distant experiments," interrupted one of her attendants, its voice a chorus of harmonics that set teeth on edge. "Your species shows promise, yet continues to repeat destructive patterns." The chamber's temperature seemed to drop as Elias processed their words. He had anticipated judgment, but not this level of condemnation. "We're learning," he insisted, his voice steady despite the knot forming in his stomach. "Every species makes mistakes in its development." Sovereign Lumina's gaze fixed upon him, her galaxy-like eyes seeming to pierce through his carefully maintained composure. "Mistakes are permissible. Willful ignorance is not. Your kind possesses knowledge of its impact, yet chooses convenience over consequence." Her crystalline form shifted colors rapidly, a display that had come to signify deep emotional response. The human delegation exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. Maria Chen, the lead xenolinguist, leaned closer to Elias. "She's referencing the Pacific Gyre incident," she whispered urgently. "They know about our attempts to conceal the extent of the plastic pollution crisis." Elias nodded imperceptibly, his mind racing. The aliens' access to such specific information suggested surveillance capabilities far beyond what humanity had disclosed. Before he could respond, Sovereign Lumina raised a faceted hand, silencing the chamber with a gesture. "We have observed your species for many cycles," she continued, her voice taking on a mournful quality that resonated through the bones of everyone present. "We see potential, yet also destruction. Your capacity for creation is matched only by your talent for annihilation." Her attendants shifted formation, creating a kaleidoscope of light that painted the walls with moving patterns. The implications struck Elias like a physical blow. They weren't just discussing environmental policies. This was an assessment of humanity's worthiness to join the galactic community. His training kicked in, overriding the wave of defensive anger threatening to overwhelm him. "Your Majesty," he began, choosing his words carefully, "every civilization must learn these lessons. We ask not for absolution, but for guidance. Show us how to improve, how to heal our world properly." He took a calculated step forward, lowering his voice. "Isn't that why you're here? To help us grow?" The chamber fell silent, the only sound the soft hum of crystalline structures breathing with their own life. Sovereign Lumina studied him, her expression unreadable yet somehow compassionate. For a moment, Elias thought he saw something akin to recognition in her galaxy-like eyes, as if she understood the burden of leadership and the constant struggle between idealism and pragmatism. Yet before she could respond, one of her attendants emitted a series of harmonic tones that caused the entire chamber to vibrate. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display materialized between the two parties. Images of Earth's environmental degradation interspersed with scenes of human achievement. The contrast was stark, almost cruel in its honesty. "We shall deliberate," Sovereign Lumina announced finally, her voice carrying a weight that pressed against everyone's consciousness. "Return tomorrow. Be prepared to demonstrate your species' commitment to change." With that, she and her entourage dissolved back into their vessel, leaving the human delegation standing in stunned silence amid the fading light show of their departure. As the chamber's artificial gravity seemed to return to normal, Elias realized his hands were trembling slightly. The encounter had been more intense than any military briefing or diplomatic negotiation he'd ever experienced. Behind him, Dr. Chen was already recording notes, her fingers flying across her tablet with desperate speed. The truth of their situation settled heavily upon them all. They hadn't just been negotiating policy, they'd been fighting for humanity's very right to exist among the stars. The following days passed in a blur of frantic preparation and mounting anxiety. Sovereign Lumina's court had issued a formal request for evidence of humanity's commitment to change, demanding demonstrations of sustainable practices and concrete plans for environmental restoration. The human delegation worked around the clock, compiling data and developing presentations that showcased Earth's most promising eco-friendly technologies. Yet beneath this outward display of cooperation, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that something crucial was being overlooked. His suspicions deepened during private moments when Sovereign Lumina's gaze would linger on him longer than necessary, her crystalline features softening in ways that seemed almost personal. During one particularly tense exchange about atmospheric rehabilitation, she had unexpectedly referenced details from his personal file: his late wife's environmental research, his daughter's work in marine conservation. Information that shouldn't have been accessible even to Earth's highest security clearance levels. Dr. Maria Chen noticed it too. Late one evening, as they reviewed presentation materials in the observation lounge, she approached Elias with an unusual request. "Captain, may I speak freely?" Her dark eyes darted toward the crystalline wall where Sovereign Lumina's ship loomed silently in orbit. "Of course, Doctor," Elias responded, though his tone suggested he already knew where this conversation was heading. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns," she began, lowering her voice despite the empty room. "There's a subtext to their messages, almost like encoded instructions. And the way Sovereign Lumina interacts with you." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's not consistent with how she treats other humans. It's as if she's trying to convey something specifically to you." Elias nodded, confirming her observations. "I've noticed it too. The way she references events from my past, her subtle emphasis on certain questions, it's like she's guiding me toward something." He paused, staring at the alien vessel. "But what could she possibly want from me personally?" Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent summons from the alien delegation. When Elias arrived at the chamber, he found Sovereign Lumina waiting alone, her crystalline form glowing with an intensity that made the air seem charged with electricity. Without preamble, she extended a faceted hand, and the chamber's walls dissolved into a swirling vortex of light and sound. In that moment, Elias experienced something beyond conventional understanding. Memories flooded his consciousness, not just his own, but fragments of Sovereign Lumina's past, glimpses of her civilization's history, and most shockingly, visions of Earth's future. He saw humanity's potential for greatness, but also its capacity for self-destruction. More disturbingly, he witnessed moments from his own life through her perspective, including intimate details that no external observer could possibly know. When the vision subsided, leaving him gasping for air, Sovereign Lumina spoke directly into his mind. "You carry the seed of understanding within you, Captain Grant. Your species stands at a crossroads, and you are uniquely positioned to guide them." Her voice carried an urgency that transcended words. The punishment I announce tomorrow will not be what it seems. Trust in what you have seen, and remember that sometimes the harshest lessons are those that appear most severe. Before Elias could respond, the chamber reformed around them, and she was gone. Returning to the human quarters, he found Dr. Chen waiting anxiously. Without needing to explain, she simply nodded, having witnessed similar cryptic exchanges during her linguistic analysis sessions. Together, they pieced together fragments of insight, realizing that Sovereign Lumina's public pronouncements served a dual purpose, communicating both to humanity and to unseen observers within her own ranks. The truth began to crystallize in Elias's mind. Sovereign Lumina wasn't merely judging humanity. She was protecting them from forces within her own civilization that viewed Earth's inhabitants as a threat. Her harsh words and apparent condemnation masked a deeper strategy, one that required humanity to prove its worth through challenge and adversity. The upcoming announcement of punishment would serve as a test, not just of human resilience, but of their ability to perceive beyond surface appearances. As dawn approached, casting the crystalline walls in soft morning light, Elias understood that the fate of humanity rested not just on diplomatic skill or technological advancement, but on their capacity to recognize and embrace the hidden truths behind Sovereign Lumina's actions. The real question remained: would humanity be able to see beyond the apparent punishment to understand its true purpose? The day of reckoning arrived with an oppressive weight that seemed to bend the very fabric of the orbital station. Representatives from Earth's governments gathered in the Grand Assembly Chamber, their faces masks of strained composure. The media feeds had been shut down at Sovereign Lumina's request, leaving billions of humans across the planet waiting in anxious silence for news of their fate. The crystalline walls of the chamber pulsed with an anticipatory rhythm, as if the alien vessel itself understood the gravity of the moment. When Sovereign Lumina entered, accompanied by her retinue of crystalline attendants, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Her form seemed more radiant than ever, each facet catching and refracting light in patterns that seemed to tell their own story. The human delegation stood as one, their practiced diplomatic smiles masking the turmoil beneath. Captain Grant, positioned at the forefront, felt the weight of his species' future pressing against his chest, each heartbeat echoing the collective anxiety of humanity. Sovereign Lumina's voice resonated through the chamber, carrying multiple layers of meaning that transcended simple translation. After careful deliberation, we find your species lacking. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Gasps rippled through the human representatives, though years of diplomatic training kept most from showing outward distress. Your treatment of your home world demonstrates a fundamental flaw in your collective consciousness. Therefore, we must impose consequences. Elias watched as the crystalline queen extended a faceted hand, and the chamber's walls transformed into a three-dimensional projection of Earth. The image zoomed in on various locations: polluted rivers, deforested landscapes, urban sprawl, each scene more damning than the last. Yet amidst these familiar displays of environmental degradation, Elias noticed something peculiar. Certain areas showed signs of recovery and sustainable development, precisely the regions he had highlighted in previous presentations. Sovereign Lumina's gaze met his briefly, and he caught the subtlest shift in her crystalline features, a flicker of acknowledgement that went unnoticed by others. "The punishment we decree is thus," she continued, her voice taking on a judicial tone that sent shivers through the assembly. "Humanity shall be restricted to its home planet for a period of 50 Earth years. No space exploration, no colonization efforts, no ventures beyond your atmosphere." The declaration hit like a meteor strike, sending shockwaves through the diplomatic corps. Some representatives visibly swayed on their feet, while others gripped their chairs with white-knuckled hands. Dr. Chen's translation device buzzed furiously as she attempted to capture every nuance of the proclamation. Through her professional demeanor, Elias detected the same realization dawning in her eyes. This punishment wasn't arbitrary. The time frame aligned perfectly with Earth's natural recovery cycles, allowing ecosystems time to heal without interference. Moreover, the restriction would force humanity to focus inward, addressing internal issues rather than escaping them through space exploration. Sovereign Lumina's attendants began arranging crystalline structures throughout the chamber, each piece resonating with specific frequencies that seemed to encode the terms of the punishment. As the alien queen elaborated on the technical aspects of the restriction, Elias noticed patterns emerging in the arrangement, mathematical sequences that corresponded to Earth's environmental rhythms. The supposed punishment was, in fact, a carefully calculated opportunity for renewal. The reactions from Earth's representatives ranged from controlled outrage to barely concealed relief. Some diplomats immediately began drafting protests, while others exchanged knowing glances that suggested they understood the hidden wisdom behind the decree. The corporate sector representatives, who had invested heavily in space mining operations, displayed the most visible distress, their carefully maintained facades cracking under the weight of lost profits. Throughout the announcement, Sovereign Lumina maintained her regal composure, though Elias detected minute fluctuations in her crystalline structure, stress patterns that suggested she was facing opposition from within her own ranks. Several times, her attendants exchanged harmonic signals that seemed to carry warning tones, and once, she paused mid-sentence, her galaxy-like eyes flickering with an emotion that transcended human understanding. When the formal declaration concluded, Sovereign Lumina addressed Captain Grant directly, her voice carrying a private resonance that only he could fully comprehend. Remember, Captain, restrictions often create the strongest foundations for growth. Your species has been given a gift, though it wears the mask of punishment. Her crystalline hand gestured toward the projection of Earth, now displaying vibrant images of restored ecosystems and sustainable communities. Use this time wisely. As the chamber began to dissolve around them, signaling the end of the formal proceedings, Elias found himself grappling with conflicting emotions. The weight of delivering this news to humanity pressed heavily upon him, yet he understood the deeper purpose behind Sovereign Lumina's decision. The real challenge lay ahead, convincing a species accustomed to expansion and exploration to embrace this forced introspection as an opportunity rather than a defeat. The crystalline walls faded completely, leaving the human delegation standing in stunned silence. Across the chamber, eyes met in shared understanding of the monumental task before them. The truth behind the punishment would need to be carefully managed, revealed gradually to prevent panic and resistance. As Elias watched Sovereign Lumina depart, her form dissolving into light, he realized that the greatest test of humanity's character was just beginning, not in defiance of the restrictions, but in their acceptance and transformation. In the aftermath of Sovereign Lumina's decree, the orbital station became a crucible of conflicting emotions and strategic maneuvering. While the official channels buzzed with diplomatic formalities and logistical planning, a deeper current of understanding began to flow between Captain Grant and the alien queen. Their interactions, initially constrained by protocol and public scrutiny, gradually evolved into something more profound and intimate. During private sessions ostensibly focused on implementation details, Sovereign Lumina would allow her crystalline barriers to lower slightly, revealing glimpses of vulnerability that resonated deeply with Elias's own experiences of loss and redemption. These moments of connection often occurred in the twilight hours, when the station's artificial day cycle dimmed and the vastness of space pressed against the observation windows. Sovereign Lumina would glide into the chamber, her form casting prismatic reflections that danced across the walls like living memories. Without words, she would initiate exchanges that transcended conventional communication, sharing fragments of her civilization's history, moments of triumph and tragedy that mirrored humanity's own journey. Elias found himself reciprocating, not just with words but with raw emotional resonance that seemed to bypass the need for translation. Their bond deepened through shared silences as much as through conversation. In these quiet spaces, Sovereign Lumina would demonstrate her understanding of human emotion in ways that defied explanation. When Elias spoke of his daughter's recent graduation, the alien queen's crystalline structure would shift into patterns reminiscent of Earth's changing seasons, a visual metaphor for growth and transition that needed no verbal explanation. Similarly, when she revealed the pressures of leadership within her own society, Elias responded with instinctive gestures of support that seemed to comfort her despite their species' differences. The emotional landscape of their relationship became increasingly complex as they navigated both personal connection and political necessity. Sovereign Lumina began incorporating elements of human culture into her court's proceedings, subtle nods to Earth's artistic heritage that only Elias recognized as intentional. In return, Elias found himself adopting mannerisms and expressions that resonated with her crystalline nature, discovering that certain human gestures translated surprisingly well into her species' nonverbal language. Their growing intimacy created ripples throughout both delegations. Human diplomats noted changes in Elias's approach to negotiations, marked by an intuitive understanding of the aliens' priorities and concerns. Meanwhile, Sovereign Lumina's attendants exhibited increased deference toward Captain Grant, their harmonic communications taking on warmer tones when addressing him. This evolving dynamic generated both hope and tension. While it facilitated smoother negotiations, It also raised questions about the nature of their connection and its implications for interspecies relations. Perhaps most significantly, their relationship began influencing the implementation of the supposed punishment. Sovereign Lumina started introducing flexibility into the restrictions, framing them as opportunities for innovation rather than limitations. Through their shared understanding, they developed strategies that allowed humanity to maintain essential space-based research while adhering to the letter of the decree. These adjustments, presented as Sovereign Lumina's unilateral decisions, actually represented collaborative solutions born from their deepening bond. As weeks turned into months, the nature of their connection evolved beyond mere diplomacy or friendship. They discovered common ground in their roles as leaders burdened with difficult decisions, finding solace in shared moments of doubt and determination. Sovereign Lumina revealed aspects of her personal history, sacrifices made for her people, choices that had cost her dearly, that helped Elias understand the weight behind her public pronouncements. In turn, she absorbed his stories of human perseverance, seeing reflected in Earth's struggles a mirror of her own civilization's journey. This emotional evolution manifested in practical ways during negotiations. Where once discussions had been formal and rigid, they now flowed with an organic rhythm that accommodated both species' needs. Sovereign Lumina's crystalline court began incorporating human elements into their protocols, while Earth's representatives adopted more fluid approaches to problem-solving. The chamber itself seemed to respond to their growing harmony, its crystalline structures aligning with human technology in increasingly sophisticated patterns of cooperation. Yet beneath this surface progress lay deeper currents of change. Sovereign Lumina's attendants began demonstrating behaviors that suggested a shift in their civilization's internal dynamics, while Earth's leadership started questioning long-held assumptions about their place in the universe. Through their connection, Elias and Sovereign Lumina were becoming catalysts for transformation that extended far beyond the immediate negotiations, touching the very foundations of both societies. The crystalline corridors of the orbital station seemed to hum with an electric tension as preparations intensified for humanity's return to Earth. Captain Grant moved through the bustling activity with a sense of purpose that masked his growing unease. Reports from Earth indicated that public reaction to the imposed restrictions had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of widespread despair, many communities were embracing the opportunity for renewal with surprising enthusiasm. Environmental organizations reported unprecedented volunteer numbers, while corporations redirected resources toward sustainable initiatives with remarkable speed. Yet beneath this surface optimism, troubling patterns emerged. Certain factions within Earth's power structures had begun interpreting Sovereign Lumina's decree as a declaration of war rather than an opportunity for growth. Military installations worldwide showed increased activity, with classified documents suggesting the development of covert space programs designed to circumvent the restrictions. Even more concerning were the encrypted communications between rogue nations and mysterious benefactors offering advanced technology that seemed suspiciously similar to alien designs. Sovereign Lumina's response to these developments was equally complex. Her crystalline court had grown noticeably more agitated, with attendants exchanging harmonic signals that carried unmistakable tones of alarm. During private sessions with Elias, she revealed that factions within her own civilization were pressuring her to enforce stricter measures against humanity. Some members of her council viewed Earth's rapid mobilization as confirmation of their species' inherent aggression, arguing that more severe restrictions were necessary. The situation reached a critical point during a routine status update meeting. As Sovereign Lumina outlined adjustments to the implementation timeline, her crystalline form suddenly fractured into a cascade of warning colors. One of her senior attendants projected a holographic display showing classified Earth military documents, blueprints for spacecraft incorporating alien technology obtained through unknown channels. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber, as both human and alien delegates realized the depth of the conspiracy unfolding beneath their feet. Elias found himself caught between escalating tensions. On one side, Earth's leadership demanded explanations for the sudden appearance of alien-derived technology, while on the other, Sovereign Lumina's court accused humanity of violating the spirit of their agreement. The captain's unique position as mediator became increasingly precarious as both sides pushed for decisive action. Dr. Chen's translation team worked around the clock, uncovering layers of subtext in the aliens' communications that suggested internal divisions within their civilization rivaling those on Earth. The complexity deepened when Sovereign Lumina revealed that the rogue technology transfers were likely orchestrated by renegade elements within her own species. These factions, disillusioned with her more moderate approach to humanity, had apparently decided to force a confrontation by arming Earth's most aggressive powers. The irony wasn't lost on Elias. The very restrictions intended to protect humanity were now being used as justification for conflict. As the orbital station systems began detecting unusual energy signatures approaching Earth's orbit, the true scope of the crisis became clear. Multiple unidentified vessels, their crystalline structures distorted and weaponized, were positioning themselves in violation of established protocols. Sovereign Lumina's court reacted with a mixture of fury and shame, while Earth's military scrambled to respond to what appeared to be an alien invasion force. Through this chaos, Elias maintained his connection with Sovereign Lumina, their bond providing a fragile thread of stability. In hurried private meetings, they worked to untangle the web of deception and betrayal threatening both their species. Her crystalline form would pulse with anxiety as she shared intelligence about internal power struggles within her civilization, while he provided insights into Earth's political machinations. Together, they began piecing together a plan that might satisfy neither side's extremists but could potentially preserve the fragile peace they had built. The station's observation deck became their command center, where crystalline projections of approaching ships overlaid with Earth's defensive grid patterns created a three-dimensional chessboard of potential conflict. Sovereign Lumina's attendants worked alongside human tactical officers, their harmonic communications translating into strategic calculations that accounted for both species' strengths and weaknesses. The air crackled with the tension of impending confrontation, yet also carried the hope of unprecedented cooperation. As the situation escalated, Elias realized that the true test of their relationship wasn't in preventing conflict, but in transforming it. The weapons being deployed by both sides carried the potential for catastrophic destruction, yet also represented opportunities for demonstration of restraint and understanding. Sovereign Lumina's crystalline court began broadcasting messages of peace to the rogue vessels, while Earth's leadership authorized limited defensive measures that emphasized containment over aggression. The climax approached with alarming speed. The rogue fleet initiated maneuvers that could only be interpreted as hostile, while Earth's newly armed satellites powered up their alien-derived weaponry. Sovereign Lumina's crystalline form radiated with an intensity that made the chamber's walls vibrate, her galaxy-like eyes reflecting the gravity of the moment. Through their connection, Elias felt the weight of her decision, to stand with humanity against her own kind, or to enforce her civilization's authority regardless of cost. In this moment of crisis, their bond transcended species and politics, becoming something more fundamental. The choices before them weren't about victory or defeat, but about defining the future of interspecies relations. As commands flew across both fleets and countdown timers ticked toward engagement, Elias and Sovereign Lumina faced their greatest challenge, not in preventing war, but in creating something entirely new from the ashes of conflict.